back later. It'll show up in the Teams chat. Right. So could you guys raise your hands, please, if you were born in a country that wasn't New Zealand? From talking to you, I'm pretty sure most of you were born overseas. So what we're going to go through now is we're going to go through how laws are made and sort of the whole process in New Zealand, the whole process of making a law. Does anyone know why we should care about that in this context? I want to take a guess. Throwing it out there, team. What do you guys reckon? Why do we care why do we need to know how laws are made? What if you? Sorry, Chloe. Want to say something?
Sorry, so we don't. So we can't.
Your mic's a bit funny, mate. I can't hear you properly.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Yep, it's much better.
Okay. Sorry, I just changed the earphone. I say that maybe that's how we avoid to be illegal. So we don't need to demolish the newly built things.
Yep, we're going to learn about so knowing the law helps us avoid
Yeah.
doing illegal stuff, right? And knowing how laws are made allows us to understand how they came to this point, and also to try and change them if we don't agree with them. Right. So New Zealand is we are a democracy, right? So we vote in Parliament every couple of years, and as part of the lawmaking process, the public actually gets a say. Okay, run this thing called select committees. We'll get to this in a minute. And you guys, hopefully, like a lot of you have already got a bunch of knowledge, right? And hopefully at the end of this, you'll have more knowledge. Right, so muting me, that's off the table, team. Hopefully by the end of this course, you will have more knowledge specific in relation to building law. And when the government comes in and they say, we want to change these laws, and you guys can actually make a educated submission and say, well, I think this part of the law is really good, but we should change this for these reasons. Okay? And unless we understand the process, we can't do that, because all we do then is we sit around at the pub, or we moan to our neighbors, or we go on Facebook community groups and we're like, the law sucks. It's like, well, why don't you do something about it? Okay, talk to your politicians, put in a submission to the select committee or something like that, and because your voice does have an effect on law out here. So I'm just going to kick into this now. Pardon me again. This is a relatively dry subject, right? We're talking about legislation and stuff. It's not real interesting. Try and make it as interesting as I can, but we need to understand it, because like a house, we've got to have solid foundations to build on, right? If we don't understand why we have the laws, if we don't understand where to find them and that kind of thing, then it gets I'm not a fan of following laws just because they're the law. Okay, we should understand why they are the law, right? Why the purpose of the law is because all that information is out there. None of it's hidden. And we're going to find as we go through this, you guys are going to read the legislation, right? And you're going to go, okay, this is why we do these things. This is why these people are responsible and why this is responsible. And that's, I know Carl went through the history of building law with you the other day, right? Yep, talked about Hammurabi and the ancient Babylonians, clay tablets found in Mesopotamia, about how you get your head cut off if you build a building that fell down. Not quite that barbaric these days, but we still have regulations around laws. Okay? So now this is a this PowerPoint I'm about to share with you is repurposed from my level 6 PowerPoint, right? Same information, but we're just not going to go into as much depth on it because we're building foundations here for you guys. So I said New Zealand is a democracy. And so that's a whole bunch of different terms for the government that we have here. Democracy is our way of voting in our elected representatives, which is one person, one vote. So anyone who's a citizen votes. I believe permanent residents can vote as well. If you have the ability to vote, I strongly recommend that you use it. I don't care who you vote for. That's none of my business. But using your franchised power to put your representative into Parliament is a right that not everyone around the world has, and so you want to use it while you're here. Now we are a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system of government. Right? A lot of $10 words there. Can anyone tell me what that means? Not Jeff. This will be easy for Jeff. He knows all this stuff already. Now, as far as I like to get a conversation going because I need to know whether you guys are involved. Now, if you want to call out something, turn your mic off and call out, or turn your mic on and call out. If I'm in the middle of a flow of something, like if you've got a question or something, just wait for me to sort of take a breath, or you can put your hand up. If you look along the Teams bar, you see there's a raise button. So I'm just going to click on that, and you see a little thing turns up there in my window, shows that I've raised my hand. And then I'll call you out. You can drop something in the chat if you like, if your mic's not working, and I will answer it when I get a chance. But this won't work unless we have some back and forth, because otherwise I'll just be lecturing and you guys will be sitting there going, this is so boring, right? We need to know what's happening. So, what is a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system of government? Sounds real complicated, is it? What's a constitution? Anyone know what that is? Or a monarch? Yep. Yeah.
My understanding, constitution is a very basic principal law of a nation.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Well done. Yeah, so the constitution is the bedrock that your country's laws are built on. That's awesome. So we're a constitutional monarchy. Does anyone know what a monarch is? A monarchy. Give you a clue. Monarch usually wears like a big hat made out of gold, sits on a throne. Right. Ring any bells for anyone? Be a few of them out there. Some countries it's illegal to criticize them, and you get in fairly serious trouble. New Zealand, you can criticize our monarch if you like. Shall I just come out and tell you? Yeah, right, man. Constitutional monarchy means that we have a king, right? And we have a constitution based around various laws, do various things, and we have a representative of parliament. Okay, now our head of state is a king. Okay, the head of New Zealand is King Charles III. I don't think that's our Governor General anymore. Might need to update this PowerPoint. Let's check for a second. Thank you, Google. Right. Is it still name Cindy? It is still the Right Honourable Dame Cindy Kiro, the Governor General. So, King Charles III, he lives over in England. He doesn't come and visit us very often, but he is our official head of state. Now, he has appointed the Right Honourable Dame Cindy Kiro as his representative here. Okay, so our Parliament basically has to ask her for permission to pass laws and stuff like that. Now, in practice, it is a rubber stamp signature, right? The Parliament comes to her with a law, and she just rubber stamps it. In theory, she could stop any laws that come through. She could dissolve Parliament, right? Make us have a whole lot of new elections. Now, this is what's known as a check and balance. You guys familiar with this term? I know some of you are who do auditing and stuff. Does anyone not know what I mean when I'm talking about checks and balances? Ooh, who is that? Does anybody not know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about checks and balances? If you are worried about letting us know that you don't know something, please don't be. All right? This is a teaching environment. I need to know what you don't know so that I can teach it. If I think you all know it, I'm just going to steamroller on and you're going to get left behind. I guarantee you, if you don't know something, and there's other people in here that don't too. So, checks and balances. So, a check and balance is sort of trying to stop someone else having unlimited power. So, if you have a like way back. Now, all of my examples that I'm going to use are from Western European history, right? England, the UK, Europe, around the Middle East and stuff, right? Romans, Greeks, all that kind of area, because that's the sort of history that I know. Way back in the old days, you used to have emperors in places like Rome, and they had unlimited power. And if you did something that the emperor didn't like, they'd just chop your head off and there's nothing you could do about it. Throw you to the lions or whatever. Right? If the group you were part of was a bit naughty, then they'd just set you all on fire. And well, what are you going to do? He's the emperor. Got unlimited power. Right? Now, as history is carried on, people have realized, maybe just throwing it out there, it's not a great idea to let one person have unlimited power. Because if they're insane, they're going to do some dumb stuff, right? And be a bit mean to people. We don't want that to happen. So we brought in checks and balances to that power. Parliaments. So the Saxons used to have the moot, which you'd have your king, but there'd be the people under him who actually had to enforce the law would come together and have meetings and confer with the king. And then after the Magna Carta signed in England, there was actually the first sort of rudimentary parliaments brought in, and the king was made to actually follow the law. These kind of things, right? Prior to that, the king made the law, so law didn't apply to him. And after the Magna Carta came around, the king had to follow the laws as well, and his nobles could make their own laws. This was about pretty close to 1,000 years ago now. But New Zealand law, we'll talk about this constitutional monarchy. Some of the law that informs the law that we have today is that old, right? It's like 1,000 years ago that we had these laws that have evolved and been built on to create the law system that we have today. So, head of state is a sovereign, Governor General, Dame Cindy Kiro, and in relation to the checks and balances, we have 3 different branches of our government. Just going to get my big fat head out of the way there. We have the legislature, which is Parliament. We have the executive branch, the people that actually do stuff. public service and local government. And we have the judiciary, judges in the courts. So, short answer, Parliament makes the law, the executive branch enforces that law, and the judiciary, judges in the courts, they interpret the law. They say how it should be applied. Any questions on that, team? We're going to go into a bit more depth, but we can understand the basic concepts here. Yep, great. Oh, don't worry about the feedback, Tony. I see your thing in the chat there. It's all good, mate. It happens sometimes. All right. The legislature. Now, we have the House of Representatives. Now, it wouldn't really be feasible for all 5 million people in New Zealand to get together and have an argument about something, right? Wouldn't really get a hell of a lot of stuff done. So what we do is we elect someone to represent us. So I'm down in Masterton. I'm in the Wairarapa electorate, and we have 2 people representing us. We have, what's his name? I used to work for him. Well, not work for him, but I did work on his farm. It's terrible. I forgot the name of the MP. National Joker. Anyway, he's a farmer, local farmer. He is our elected representative. And we also have a guy called Kieran McAnulty, who represents the Labour Party, and he lives in the Wairarapa. So he's a list MP for Labour. Now, if I find that there's something I think that is crucial to the Wairarapa development, I could go and talk to either of those 2 guys. So you need to bring this to Parliament. You need to represent our area for the rest of Parliament and try to get us some funding or something for this. Right? There's 2 different ways of getting into Parliament in New Zealand because we have a mixed member proportional system. So that means we've got a bunch of electorates, and then you also vote for a party. Right now, the old system that we had, you just had electorates, and it wasn't really very representative. What you'd end up with was a government that might have been made up of people that only 25 or 30% of the country voted for. Under the current one, and for all its flaws, it is still representative. You should have a government that represents at least 50% of the population. It's the idea with democracy, right? So you got your electorate MPs that get voted in to represent that area, and then you have your list MPs that are brought in for the party vote. And another way of doing it is they have tail coating. So when you get an electorate MP, you get a couple of extra MPs out of your party to come and join you. And that makes your voice louder in Parliament, right? Now, Winston Churchill, not Winston Peters. Anyone heard of Winston Churchill? Right, he was the British Prime Minister during World War II. Right, he was pretty famous. He used to say that democracy is the worst of all the political systems, except for all of the others. Right, so he's saying that democracy is the best. It's still not ideal, but it's the best system because it gives everyone a voice. Can be a bit painful to negotiate sometimes because you have to actually negotiate with people. You can't just decide what you got to do. But that's the soul of democracy, right? I am a fan of democracy. I think it's pretty good. Now, what we have this is the House of Representatives. So this is all. You see, I've put these things in italics. Okay, that's because they have specific meanings. Okay, so the House of Representatives. Oh, someone's got their hand up, do they? I mean, Tony, sorry, do you want to say something, mate? Or? So I'm guessing that let's bump the button. So the House of Representatives is all of our political representatives, and they get together and they will represent us, the people of New Zealand. Good on you, man. So the House of Representatives has several roles, including passing new laws and amending old ones, and examining and approving the government's taxes and spending. Okay, so we've got three different italicized things here. Okay, you've got the House of Representatives. That is all of the MPs in the country. And the government is the people that actually run the country from day to day. Okay, so at the moment, we have National First, so a coalition of National, ACT, and New Zealand First is our government. Okay, so they actually pass the laws. Now, the MPs that are not in government are the ones they're meant to basically hold the government to account. Okay, they should be asking them difficult questions and calling them out on bad policies and representing their constituents to the government. Yeah. Now, if a specific party holds more than 61 seats, 120 seats in Parliament, then it can form a government by itself. But generally, what will happen is you'll have a coalition government, which is what we've got at the moment. I think National's got about 40 seats, and New Zealand First has 5 or 6, and ACT makes up the rest. Right. So in those sort of scenarios, generally expect that the larger coalition partners have a bigger say in things. Now, to make new laws, the House of Representatives will examine and amend a bill. Okay? Then present the finished product to the sovereign, in this case the Governor General, for royal assent. So, let's say that you were elected to Parliament and you felt incredibly strongly about coffee cups. Right? You're like, all coffee cups must be a minimum of this size. Right, because this is the minimum size for a coffee cup. Anything smaller than this is just it's a mug, and it shouldn't be called a coffee cup. And I'm going to bring a members' bill to Parliament around this. All coffee cups must be at least 500 millimeters in size, or they cannot be sold as a coffee cup. Now, I'll present that to Parliament, and it will go through a series of readings, right, where everyone can debate it. Might have David Seymour's party saying that's ridiculous. That's against the whole concept of free representation. I can call whatever I want a coffee cup. Right? And we might have the Greens saying that all coffee cups should actually be paper, and we need to amend that. Yep, 3 readings. That's right. Yep, it goes through the select committee process, and the people of New Zealand can actually write to the select committees, right, and say, well, we think that this bill is great, or this bill is silly and it needs to be amended in these ways. Now, after the 3rd reading, it goes to the Governor General, and the Governor General signs it into law. Right, and then it becomes a law. Prior to that point, it is a bill. Right? Everyone keeping up so far? Cool. All right. Now, once a bill has passed through the parliamentary process, it becomes an act of Parliament. It becomes part of New Zealand's law. Right? Now, once it becomes a law, now as it goes through, the readings and stuff, we have Parliamentary Council will read it. Right? And Parliamentary Council is the government's legal advisors. Remember how I said earlier, way back in England, about 1,000 years ago, we had this law passed that the king has to follow the law. You guys remember that? Right? Now, what that means too is that new laws, our parliament has to follow the law, has to follow the constitutional documents that we have, and they can't just make up laws that that disagree with previous laws, or that ignore previous laws, that ignore our constitutional documents. Because if they do, then they are breaking the law, they're responsible, and blah blah blah. Right. So, our politicians, our government, they are not lawyers, right? They're not expected to be. They're representing the people of New Zealand, right? And not everyone in New Zealand is a lawyer. We've got architects and plumbers and builders and fishermen and unemployed people and mums and dads and all that, right? So the people that we want representing us in Parliament want to be a microcosm of that. And there are experts that work for the government to give them the expert information that they need. In the same way that you guys, a lot of you in here, are doing this course because you want to build a house, right? You might not build the house yourself. You'll hire builders, you'll hire architects and designers, but you want to understand the process and you want those people to explain it to you, right? So Parliament has those experts as well. And once the law comes in, someone has to interpret it. Right? Now, what generally happens is that laws are usually written reasonably clearly, right, in my experience. But every now and then you're going to get like some stuff that people argue about. Right? And it'll come before the court, and the judges will say, okay, well, this person is right, or this other person is right. And that then creates a precedent around that law. Okay, so the judiciary, that's where this stuff happens. This is the courts and the judges. Now, judges interpret the law when cases come before the courts. Okay? So there's been a whole lot of building cases come before the courts over the years. Just I've gone completely blank. Just trying to think of one now. There was one recently that we're talking about. There's Jeff. You are still in here. What's a famous building law precedent case? I can't think of anything. I've gone completely blank. There's a recent one.
Just recent one, probably. For the laws, one that's actually gone through the whole process. That's, I know there's a lot that's sitting with judges at the moment, but the ones that gone through the whole process that we've got now law is, we've got a holiday now that's gone through Parliament. So Matariki,
Yep,
that's come through. That's probably going to chat about.
Yep, yeah, Matariki's a good law that's gone all the way through Parliament. So that someone brought it to Parliament as a bill, and they were like, "We should have another holiday, and it should be a truly New Zealand holiday, right? Aotearoa." And so we're going to base it around the traditional Māori solstice celebration, and yeah, we're gonna do that. Now there was another one recently Sam was talking about. We'll come back to this one when I've had a bit more thought about it. It was like when you get put on the spot. It's like when you take your car to the mechanics. That stops breaking down and works all of a sudden. And the courts can review decisions of government, okay, including local government. So, you guys that were having trouble with building inspectors, Right? Now the process, and we're going to talk more about this, or Carl will talk more to you about it, or you find it in your Moodle. Okay. Let's say that I turn up on your site and I have an issue with some of the work that's gone on. Right? I'm a building inspector and I fail your inspection. Okay? And you think I'm wrong. And you have evidence to say that I'm wrong, and you go through building code stuff. You say, James is wrong, and you talk to my boss. And my boss says, no, James is right. You're like, well, then you're wrong too. And you want to escalate it. So you can go to MB, which is part of the public service. We'll get to that in a second. And you can get MB to make a ruling on it. Now, if MB sides with us, and you might say, no, MB's wrong too. The law is on my side, and you guys are all wrong. You can then take it to courts, right? And get them to make a ruling on the interpretation of the law. Okay? So you can say, well, these guys are overstepping their bounds, or they're just plain wrong. Right? And the courts will then make a decision, and that will be binding. Now, if we follow through that process, right, when I come out on site to do the inspection, I am representing the building consent authority, which has given you the consent. And so my say is pretty much final, as long as I can back it up with some evidence. It's not just my opinion. I say this is incorrect because the law says so. Right, now my boss will also interpret that law. Now you might say, you guys aren't lawyers, you don't know what you're talking about. We're going to take it to the next level, and then you can go to MB. Now, if MB makes a ruling on that, that ruling is specific to that ruling only. Okay? So you and your neighbor might be building the same sort of house. You have this problem in your house, goes to MB, and MB says, customer is right, council is wrong. Now your neighbor's building the same thing, and they do the same thing, and then they go through the process. They might find when they get to MB that the council is right. Right? Because the circumstances may be slightly different, and those decisions made by MB are not precedent. Okay? They are specific to that single job. Now, if you argue with MB and you take it to the courts, to your local court or the High Court or the Supreme Court, then the decisions that they make become a thing called precedent. Okay? And in future, when other judges are considering similar work, then they will have to follow what the previous judges said. Okay? So that's two different things. We get into determinations, this will make a bit more sense. Get a little bit deeper into that. But yeah, that's how the judges and the courts work. Remember, no one is above the courts, not the government. So they can all be reviewed by the courts. Thank you, Tony. I see you dropping a couple of other things in the chat there around recent bills that have come through. That's great. Now, executive part of the government. These are the guys. So this is your national first at the moment. Right? Government's made up of members from the House of Representatives. To form a government, they've got to have a majority of votes in the House of Representatives. Why do they need a majority of votes? And you want to tell me that? What matters? What happens if they don't have a majority? I'm just going to sit here until someone answers. Tony, yep, to represent the majority of the people. In a practical sense, if you don't have a majority, you can't pass any laws. You've got to have a majority to pass a law. So you can't really govern a country if you don't have a majority. Now, the the government runs the country day to day. Now, the big thing, as far as the day-to-day running of the country and the majority, is that the government must vote on whether to fund the country, right? They do the budget and they say, we're going to borrow this money, we're going to spend it here and here. If you don't have a majority, can't vote on that. Public servants don't get paid, and people tend to stop working if they don't get paid, and then the country will kind of just dissolve, right, into anarchy and chaos. Crazy. Dogs laying down with cats and sheep roaming the streets will be nuts, right? But you don't have to have a majority all of the time. But some parliaments have been run on what they call a like a supply agreement, basically. So on important votes like the budget, other parties will side with the majority party, and you'll get 50% majority. But then other bills that come through, like a good example of that was the euthanasia bill a couple of years back. MPs were encouraged to vote with their conscience rather than along party lines there. So you can work on that too. Yeah. Now, government departments. So I keep bringing up MB, which is the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, I believe, because that's the one the building falls under. They are directed via policy decisions from ministers of the Crown. That's MPs who are members of the government. Now, your MPs shouldn't really be getting into the day-to-day running of government departments. They shouldn't be coming down to the staff members' desks and saying, hey, how's that determination coming along there, Sunshine? I think you should be ruling this way. Hey, generally how that should be run is like a management perspective, right? Now, a couple of you guys in here are property developers. You're not going on site and telling your builders how to hammer nails, or how to put frames together. Okay, you hire them because they know what they're doing, and you have quality control in place, and you're going to go and check out their work to make sure they're not building it upside down or something. You're not going to get down to the nitty gritty. You're going to manage it. You're going to hire competent people. You're going to make sure they do what they do it, but you're going to guide them. Okay, you're going to, if we take the building analogy, you're going to give them a set of plans, and you're going to say, this is how I want my house to be built, so that you actually get the 200 square meter, 1.5 story place that you wanted, rather than a 3-story, 50 square meter place, right? So the MPs guide the government departments by policy decisions. They will say, we want you to, implement policy around this. So the current government has some policies around being able to build granny flats, right? But presuming all you guys have heard this because you're in this classroom, so you're probably a little bit interested in building. So there's a proposal to be able to build small buildings without a consent, right? Now, the minister will have gone to MB because the minister's not a builder. He's not an architect. He doesn't understand the actual law. So he'll have gone to MB and he will have said to them, this is what we want to do. You guys find me a way to do it, right? MB will have gone off and come back and presented him with several options within the law. Said, well, this is probably the simplest way. You could try it this way or this way, right? Now, local government should work the same way. And when you guys are dealing with councils, now what I have found before, this is an interesting sort of a thing. Generally, when we're dealing with people who don't work in councils, and none of you guys work in councils, now you elect your local representatives, right? You elect your community ward people, your local councillors, and your mayor. Now, the mayor and the councillors don't go and tell the council workers what to do. Okay, the mayor and the councillors hire the CE of the council and tell him the direction that they want the council to go in. So in relation to building, they might say, well, we want more green land freed up for development, and you need to direct your staff, your planners and stuff, to look at that in the long-term plan. But remembering that mayors and councillors and members of parliament all have to follow the law, the mayor isn't going to go into the building control office and say, you need to give my friend Jeff his building consent. Right? He's telling me that that you guys are holding it up and it's really unreasonable. Okay, if the mayor does that, that is illegal, right? That's corruption. And they can get punished quite heavily, and they should, because that is that's breaking. Remember I talked before about checks and balances, right? So the building control people have laws that they have to follow. The mayor comes and tells them that they need to break those laws in order to give someone something like a building consent. That is highly illegal, right? And New Zealand is generally ranked as one of the least corrupt countries in the world. And yeah, nice to keep it that way, right? So we need to know that that stuff is illegal, and they're going and talking to the mayor and getting the mayor to put acid on the building control authority is a bad thing to do, right? It's a bit naughty. Right? We have other ways of doing so that are actually legal. You guys are going to learn about how it all works. So this is the public sector. So we've got a bunch of different ones here. The public service here. This is the actual public service, right? What we think of when we talk about public service is a little key over here. Crown-owned companies. Now these are businesses that should make a profit, but they're owned by the Crown. Okay, so the profit goes back to the Crown. But they have to juggle different things. Like, so a normal company, in the sense that we know about it under capitalism, is it's about making money for shareholders. And now a Crown-owned company is, of course, going to make money for the shareholders, but its shareholders are the people of New Zealand, right? And so it has a couple of other things it has to balance as well. Now these we've got different kinds. We've got subject to ministerial influence. So these are Crown-owned companies where the minister can actually tell them what to do. And then we have independent Crown-owned companies like state-owned enterprises and mixed ownership model companies. Now these ones, they're not subject, and I'm sure I'm not telling you guys anything that you don't already know, is that there tends to be a couple of different sides to the political spectrum, right? And as government changes, policy directions will change. Now these type of companies are subject to that. They might get a national government comes in and they want the government to, so they want the company to work a specific way. You might get a Greens coalition government come in and they want the companies to think more about environmental issues. Now, Crown-owned companies that are independent from ministers, they just work in the market, right? They don't worry about that stuff. Now, all these purple things here are all part of the public service. You get public service departments, etc., Crown agents, the New Zealand Police, the New Zealand Defence Force, and the Parliamentary Council Office. Now, remember, this is a third part of government, right? This is not under direct control of the government. The government directs these people on what to do. Why would it be a good thing that these are sort of independent? Like, government pays them, government calls out their budget and signs it off. But we don't have the defence minister in New Zealand saying, hey, can I borrow one of those helicopters to fly me and my mates to the beach this week? Right. So why is it a good thing that this is independent of government? Any ideas? So my local MP, National Joker, I've done some work for him on his farm a couple of times over the years. And he's a good sort of a guy, but I don't agree with him on everything. Right? If I'm talking to you guys, can I say that? Right? Can I say, hey, who's our current Minister of Defence? Can't think who he is now. Jeff, do you know who the Minister of Defence is? Minister of Police? Collins is Minister of Police, eh?
Yeah, he's there's two deputies that are going for his role at the moment. Yeah, but he's standing down. Yeah, on the last leg of announcing the new Minister of Police.
Okay, cool. So we'll say it's Judith Collins as Minister of Police. I think she was at one point. Now, if I say I don't really like what Judith Collins has done, like I don't like the suit that she's wearing on TV tonight, doesn't really go with her complexion, right? And I put that up on Facebook. Now I can do that. Now, in a country where the New Zealand police were directly under Judith Collins and did everything that she said, and I put up on Facebook that I don't like Judith Collins' suit, I might well have some jokers turn up at my door saying, what do you not like about Judith Collins' suit there, sir? I think you come down to the station and have a talk to us about that. Right? So having these things, these are the arms of enforcement. Okay, we have the police, the defence force. Having those things directly under ministerial control invites corruption. Okay? You'll generally find that in countries where there are military coups, sorry, that's not quite right. Yeah, we want to have that separation of powers. And having the Parliamentary Council Office separate from that is also very important, because government is subject to the law. A government can change laws, they can bring in new laws, but they can't break them. Parliamentary Council tells them whether the laws they are proposing will break previous laws. Right? So again, these are all very important things to keep separate, because if you have them directly under the minister, then the minister can just go, well, I don't like that, and so I'm going to change it, right? Whether it's legal or not. Or I don't like that person, so I'm going to rock up to their house with an LAV and just level it. And there's nothing anyone can do about it because I own Defence Force. Okay? We don't want that. That's not how you have a functioning democracy. Now, off to the side, we have the legislative branch. This is the people that actually do all the work in Parliament, right? So you get your parliamentary services and the office of the clerk. Now, if you run an office in Parliament, they will provide you with office staff. And these guys are all meant to be, in fact, this whole public service, right? All of this stuff is meant to be politically neutral. And the same with the local government. And when you're working for a council, you're politically neutral in your professional life. So what that means is that you might vote for whoever. You might have whatever political things you want to save the environment, or you want to bottom trawl, cook straight, and wreck all the coral. That's fine in your personal life, but in your professional life, you're not going to talk about any of that stuff. You're just going to do what the government of the day, the policies direct you to do, and you're going to follow the laws that have been laid out, and you're going to enforce those laws where required without fear or favour. Everyone's going to get the same shake of the stick. So all these staff in here, they work for National or Labour or the Greens or whoever they're required to do, and they do a pretty professional job. I've met a few people that do that. And then we have the officers of Parliament that actually hold people to account. You've got the Auditor General that watches over the banks, the Ombudsman for Insurance, Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, a whole lot of these sort of things that are appointed by Parliament, but are separate to it. Now, the judges, most tertiary institutions in New Zealand are government funded, at least partially. Most teachers in New Zealand and schools are government funded, right? At least to a large part. They're not all government funded and run, but a lot of them are. Reserve Bank of New Zealand, again, this needs to be separate from our government because, otherwise they'll treat it as their own little bank. Just going to borrow $20 till payday. That all good, right? And then over here we have the local government, which is what most of you guys will be dealing with in the construction industry. Okay, that's your regional, your territorial, and your unitary councils. What questions have we got about this, team? Nothing, we're all good. All right, cool. Crack on. You find that on this link here. So local government. So you got local, regional, and unitary authorities. There are 11 regional councils in New Zealand, 61 territorial authorities, and 6 unitary councils. So a unitary council is a territorial authority that is also a regional council. Does anyone know what Auckland is? Which sort of category Auckland falls under? So Ying, you've turned your mic on. That's what you want to. Okay. So Auckland is a unitary authority, right? So where I live, down in Masterton, we have Marston District Council. 10 minutes down the road, I've got Carterton District Council. Half an hour down the road, I've got South Wairarapa District Council. Now, if I go north, about 40 minutes up the road, I've got Tararua District Council. Okay? Now, and then over the Rimatakas towards Wellington, we've got Wellington City Council, we've got Upper Hutt City Council, we've got Porirua City Council. So these are all separate territorial authorities. Now, all of these territorial authorities in the lower North Island, we come under one regional authority called Greater Wellington Regional Council. Now, the reason that these sort of things work like this is because each type of authority has different responsibilities. And so when I was working for South Wairarapa District Council, we were responsible for buildings, right? We're responsible for land under our building and our planning department. We were not responsible for the water. We were not responsible for rivers. Okay, we had outsourced that to Greater Wellington Regional Council because that's another level of expertise that can be quite hard to keep at like 10 different councils, right? So we created one regional one which does the whole area. Now Auckland, because you guys are the biggest city in New Zealand, there's about 1.2 million people in Auckland. You do all three, right? You do territorial and regional, and cover everything. Right? So you're a unitary authority. Do your own dams, look after your own water, discharges to air, discharges to land, all that sort of business, right? Now, local government. Did someone just wake up one day and decide, you know what, I'm going to start running these towns. You think that's what happened? And they just got a bunch of people around them, and they're like, let's all pretend that we're in charge and we're just going to run this stuff. You guys reckon, is that what happened? Can I just go out and start running Masterton now? And people do what I tell them? They might. What do you think? If I start a revolution and no one's going to care that Masterton's being run by dictator James, plumbing will be better. Guarantee that. Better plumbing stuff going on. What do you reckon, team? What where did local government come from? Where did it all start? I'm getting paid for just sitting here and staring at the screen. Yeah, Tony? Yep, they are elected. That is bang on. Thank you. So, local government draws its legitimacy from central government. Right. So, there's so many people in New Zealand. It's actually quite a large country. We all think we're brought up in my generation. We're brought up, oh, New Zealand's this tiny little country. And as far as land area goes, we're pretty big. We don't have a hell of a lot of people. We're spread out a lot. So instead of Parliament having to run everything from Wellington, we have local government set up. And a lot of the day-to-day business of running a country is farmed out to local government. And then we operate the electoral stuff at a local level again, right? Because if I was appointed to run Auckland, I don't know what's important to the people of Auckland because I don't live there. I don't care. Right? Well, I'll do my best to care in a professional sense, but I won't have that attachment there. Right? So you guys vote for people that you think represent you, represent the views that you want to see in your city or your town. Now the mayor and council, they hire the CE. They delegate the operational running to them. That's a check and balance to prevent political interference in the regulatory process. Now, building control is not always a pleasant thing, right? Because if people do something wrong, then there has to be someone to tell them that they've done it wrong. Because if you just let it go, and then people are injured or killed because of something wrong with a building, or someone down the track buys a building that is poorly made, turns around and sues the council, right? Because those building control officers have just let that go. That's a bad thing, right? Because they didn't follow the law. Now, if we didn't have this separation here, then you could have, and this has happened quite in history. This isn't something that I've just invented. You can have people who are property developers and the like getting voted into local government and then essentially bypassing things like the Building Act, right? By telling the staff that they're only allowed to follow certain things and stuff like that. It's not how it works, okay? The law is the law, whoever is in place. And so therefore we have this check and balance where your mayors and councillors don't actually get involved in the day-to-day running of the council. Okay? They give policy direction, but then they should leave the rest of it up to the staff to enforce the law. Make sense? Yep. No. Right. Rolling on then. Tony, I'm getting some good feedback from you, buddy. How are you feeling with it? Keep it up? Is this old news to you? Okay, cool. Stuff, right? Couple of people, that's excellent. Remember, guys, you are paying for this course. So in order to get the most out of it, you do need to get involved. Right? Me and Jeff, we're experts. Carl's an expert. We are here to teach you everything that you want to know about this stuff. But you need to get involved to get the most out of your investment. All right, now what are councils responsible for? I'm going to go around the room and I'm going to find out from everyone one thing that councils are responsible for. Liling, you're first on my list. What do you think a council's responsible for?
Council responsible for traffic.
Yes, council is responsible for a lot of your local roads. All your like your main highways and stuff. That's central government. But often they farm that out to local government, just give them the money to do it. But yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. That is something that local council is responsible for. Tony, give me one thing that council's responsible for.
For instance, Auckland local council will be responsible for many things in vast fields. Something smaller like rubbish recycle collection, and something big as the traffic management, and for Auckland maybe the planning. And for in particular for our building industry or the construction industry. So the central government got something implemented nationwide, like a national policy of something, but when it comes to the local government, like Auckland City or Auckland Regional Council, it will be more specific, because the central government don't put everything in detail in the clause, and let something freedom to let the local government to decide for the
That's real
city
good,
planning.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
that's good. Thank you. Yep, we'll just stop you there because I want to leave some for the rest of the class to come in as well. But we had rubbish, we had recycling, traffic planning, long-term planning, right? And interpreting, that those things from central government in a lot of ways. Yep, that's excellent, Tony. Thank you. Lulu, what can you throw out there? Have a look at this photo if you're having trouble coming up with anything. So far we've had like roads, we've had rubbish. I don't see rubbish on here, but there's a lot of other stuff on this photo. I can't hear you, Lulu. I can see you've got your mic turned on. Can't hear anything.
Is it better now?
Yes, we can hear you, Lulu. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I was putting it on a speakerphone, so.
That's all good. So what's one thing that you think local council is responsible for?
Manage with protected trees.
Yes. Yep. We've got like each council has like trees that they need to they've said are important to that area. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Chloe, what do you reckon?
So far,
So you need to do your ear thing again, I think, Chloe.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, that's better.
That's better. Okay, it's got a few been mentioned. So local planning. There was mentioned environment. What? Was mentioned
Sorry?
community. I guess. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Dude, yeah, you're breaking up a wee bit.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Kind of.
Okay. Kind of. Sorry.
Yep.
I'll mention one, public health and safety.
Yeah. Yep. Councils have the they have the delegated responsibility to like make decisions around like local
Yeah, food
restaurants.
safety, regulating food safety and management and stuff.
So that's a pretty broad topic,
Yeah.
the health and safety one, and it is it's generally for your local council around public health, right?
Yeah.
So you do have health boards, it's not health boards,
Yeah.
there's GHBs and stuff that look after medical health, but the councils have a very solid role in waste management, waste disposal, waste treatment, and what restaurants can operate, tattooists, all that sort of business. So thank you, Chloe.
Okay.
Linda, you had your hand up.
Right. Did you hear me?
I can hear you now, Minda.
Okay. How about the planning and delivery? Harbour Beach is the main project, right? And the council
Yep.
have a look at. And the planning as well.
Yep, the
and
planning.
all about
Yep.
the transportation, infrastructure,
Yes.
urban regeneration, and harbour biodiversity, because involving a lot of things.
Yep. Yep. That's awesome. Thank you. Yep. So we've got transportation, we've got trains, we've got buses, we've got planning for all those things. We've got planning for like environmental planning and resource planning. I was just going to grab a couple more. Xing Yao, would you like to throw one out there?
Okay, yeah. I think the responsibility maybe then I think that before we tell the law, maybe I think that maybe it's for the council is then check the people's everyone for the law for the role, and give them maybe the double check them document everything's maybe the proof for the people's that everything's the right positions the right ways and something. This I think that maybe for these ones for his responsibility and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We've got the voting, we've got polls. And Ravidi, give me the last one. What do you reckon?
I think
Yeah, the environmental planning, the city planning.
Yep, city
Yeah.
planning, that's good. It's excellent, guys. Thank you very much, team. That was some good ones. Some other stuff we've got in the picture here. You got, this comes under your resource planning. Right? Can we have power? Can we have power generation in our area? Can we have these windmills built here? We have iwi liaison. We want to make sure that we consult with the local tribes on like our environmental planning and pretty much everything, right? We've got building control. Right? That's a big thing for us in this room. We've got wetlands and environmental stuff, town libraries, public toilets, sports fields, sports arenas, licensing for food, the voting process, museums, waste disposal, graveyards. Right, it's crazy. All the stuff that your local council has to do. Land use, water use, regulation discharges to land, water and air, public transport and civic amenities, roading, multi engagement, heaps more. So in Auckland, your unitary authority does all of this itself, right? Down where I live, the land use is done by Greater Wellington. Water use is done by Greater Wellington. The discharges to land, water and air is done by Greater Wellington. Public transport is partially done by Greater Wellington, partially done by the local councils. The civic amenities, so generally the way we work it here is if you're going in between two areas, if I'm travelling from Masterton to Wellington, it'll be Greater Wellington. If I'm travelling within Masterton, it'll be Masterton District Council. Civic amenities is if you've all heard of the Cake Tin down in Wellington, the big stadium there, right? That was funded through Greater Wellington. and our local town hall here in Marsden is Marsden District Council. Roading, got a couple of roads of national importance in our area that the government, central government, gives money to maintain, but local government actually has the job to maintain them. And Māori engagement, do we have Māori wards in our area? Do we, so in South Wairarapa, for example, we're working on a large waste disposal system for our sewage, and previously our waste went to a river, and that's really a no-no in Tikanga Māori, right? You don't dispose straight to water, which is a pretty clever idea whatever way you slice it, because when you put waste into water, it pollutes the water, and people downstream get sick and die. And after consultation with Māori, council actually brought some land to dispose of it onto land to filter it away, right? So yeah, local government does a hell of a lot of work. Now, we are talking specifically about BCAs. What? Still remember what that word was? Who could tell me what that stands for? Xinghan, can you remember the what BCA stood for?
Building Concern Authority.
Legend, right? You get a virtual chocolate fish. I'll just drop it through the camera there. All right, well done. Okay, Building Consent Authority. Now, what you guys are learning, a lot of the stuff is from the perspective of the Building Consent Authority or about engaging with a Building Consent Authority. Yeah. So, Building Consent Authority fits into the local government. It's not regional council. It sits under the territorial authority. Okay, so you have your territorial authority is the big overarching thing that does all your dog control and all that sort of business, and the BCA is a little unit inside of that. Now, this is written with building control officers in mind. Right? So for you guys, a building control officer will have a job description. They'll often have a warrant card. Okay? A warrant card is not a warranty on their goods or services. The same sort of thing that a police officer has. It gives them specific powers under the law. And there's also a thing called a delegations roster. Now, if you guys are working in a building consent authority, then you'll have a thing called a quality management system or a QA manual or something similar. They will have a delegations roster at the back. A delegations roster will say who can do what. Depending on those things, then the building control officer may represent the territorial authority or the building consent authority. Now, when I was a building control officer, I worked for the building control authority and the territorial authority. Right? For me, it was the same job, but it was very important from a legal point of view that I knew what my role was under the BCA and my role under the TA, because if I was doing work under the BCA, and BCA work was, for example, doing inspections on work that was done with a building consent. Okay, so you've got a building consent from me for a house and I go on site to look at it. That's BCA work. Okay. Now, if I do my BCA work and while I'm there, I see that you're building a second house and the second house doesn't have a consent. Now, from a legal point of view, I don't just trot over there, right, and start yelling at you about building this other house. Because then if it gets to court, I will lose because I haven't followed the procedure, right? So I do my BCA work, I inspect this house here, and then do all that. I give you the inspection manual, and then I metaphorically put another hat on, and I say, hey, just while I'm here, so we've done the building control authority, we've done the consented work here. Now I need to talk to you as a representative of the TA, right? And I need to talk to you about this work over here. I don't have a record of a consent for this. Can you give me some information on it, please? right? Now, if I don't make that disconnect between the two jobs, then I'm in trouble, and I'm going to cost the council a lot of money. Right? So it's very important that we understand that the BCA is separate to the TA. It is part of the TA, but it is its own separate thing. Now, I have known building control officers around the country that have done building control work, building consent authority stuff. Then they'll do swimming pools, which is territorial authority stuff, swimming pool audits. Okay, and then they will go and have a look at illegal building work, or sorry, unconsented building work. So we don't call it illegal, it's up to the courts to decide. And they've also done dog control occasionally. That's been on their warrant card. And they've also done, can't remember the exact phrasing of it, but when you go to like the AMP show, or like the little fairs that come around, and they have like the Ferris wheels and the ghost houses and shit, that's actually legislated as well. And some of these guys had the ability under their warrants to go and check those things out. So it can be a pretty big job if you're working for the TA. Now, Auckland, because you are so big, right? Auckland City Council staff are generally specialised. So you will have Auckland City Council staff that only work for the Building Consent Authority and only do building consent inspections, right? And if they get on site and they find that there's a house over here that's being built, they're pretty sure it doesn't have a consent, then they would leave site. Like they'd do what they had to do here. Then they'd walk off and they'd make a phone call to the office and they'd say, hey guys, I think that there is this building over here that's possibly been built without a consent. Can you send out one of our compliance officers to look at it? And that's how they make that disconnection. Right, so different councils do it different ways. Yeah, so basically it kind of looks like kind of like this, right? There's your BCA responsibilities versus your TA responsibilities, because the TA covers everything, right? All that stuff that was on the chart. And the BCA is just about building. It is just about issuing building consents. It is about inspecting the work under those consents, and it's about issuing certificates for those consents. Okay. Now I'm going to give you guys a task now. I'm going to have a look at when we get back after lunch. So you've got about 20 minutes to do it. Now what you need to do is going to have a couple of different websites that you need to know about. So I'm going to share this one with you. All right, this is a very important website if you want to know anything about building law in New Zealand. And it is legislation.govt.nz. Okay, so you're going to need to go to legislation.govt.nz. I'm going to drop these instructions into the chat, right, but I expect you to, you might have to write these down if you don't have access to the chat, or just listen up. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to legislation.govt.nz, and you are going to find the Building Act 2004. Just typing these down as I'm saying them, right? So, you're going to find Building Act 2004. Now what I want you to do is I want you to find the purposes of the Building Act. Well, it'll be relatively easy to find that bit. I want you to read them. Right? Why not just go in there and say, yeah, I found it. You're actually going to read them, because I am going to ask questions about this when we get back after lunch. And I want you to find the role of the Building Consent Authority and Territorial Authority. And again, read them. Understand the difference. Okay. So,
Sorry, can you repeat again? Which number do you want?
yep. So I've dropped it in the chat, Chloe, as well. So you're going to go to legislation.govt.nz. Okay, that is a government website for legislation. You're going to find the Building Act 2004 on that website. Within the Building Act, you're going to find and read the purposes of the Building Act 2004. Okay? And you're also going to find and read the role of the Building Consent Authority and the Territorial Authority. And now we're going to knock off the morning now. And so I want you to do that. Shouldn't take you too long. You've got about 20 minutes until lunchtime. You can read it while you're eating your sandwich if you like. But make sure you do stop for lunch. Like if you find yourself just driven to read the entire Building Act, that's cool. I applaud it. But make sure that you eat your lunch while you're doing it. And we're going to pick those particular bits out and we're going to have a talk about them after lunch. We're going to come back at 1 p.m. to do that. Does anyone not understand what you have to do? I've dropped it in the chat. It should be relatively straightforward. All right, so I'm shutting my camera and mic off now, team. You go off and do that. I'll see you back here at 1 p.m. Okay? Yeah, right, no. Awesome. Thanks for Vinny. Yep, Shanghai, great stuff. See you guys back just over an hour.
Thank you.
No problems. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
You're welcome,
Thank
guys.
you, James. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll see you back at 1.
Yep.